Hello, my name is Josh Gallo, and today I will be talking about how the Synoptic Gospels were written. The word synoptic means viewed together. This means that the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke can be viewed together to tell a detailed story of Jesus' life and ministry. The content of these Gospels were first spoken orally after Jesus' ascension into heaven, and then were written down in the later half of the 1st century AD, though great speculation exists about the exact year each one was written. First, we have the Gospel according to Matthew. This Matthew was the apostle who was with Jesus during his public ministry. His book addresses a Jewish audience to show that Jesus was the Messiah and coming King of Israel. It is thought to have been written between 50 AD and 85 AD, and it is debated among scholars whether it was written before or after Mark's Gospel, though many believe Mark was written first, which I will discuss in a moment. Matthew may have been originally written in Hebrew and then translated into Greek, and it is theorized that he used Mark's Gospel and something called the Q source to write his book, in addition to his own knowledge. The Q source is a hypothetical compilation of extra-biblical information that captured much of what happened in the 1st century, kind of like a history textbook. Next, we have the Gospel according to Mark. This Gospel was written by a man named John Mark, an evangelist who interpreted for Peter the Apostle and from whom he gets the content for his Gospel. Mark addresses a Roman audience, illustrating that Jesus was a model servant and wonder worker. It is thought to have been written between 55 AD and 70 AD, but as I mentioned earlier, it is widely accepted that Mark was the first Gospel written. Mark wrote in Greek, and as the first Gospel written, it is believed that Matthew and Luke wrote their Gospels with Mark in front of them, since 95% of Mark is found in the other Synoptic Gospels. Last, we have the Gospel according to Luke. Luke was a physician who also wrote the book of Acts and was a companion of Paul the Apostle on his missionary journeys. He specifically wrote to a man named Theophilus, a possible patron of Luke who may have financed the writings of both his books. Luke's Gospel also addresses a Greek audience, showing that Jesus was the perfect man and friend of humanity. It is thought to have been written between 55 AD and 90 AD, and in the opening verses of his Gospel, Luke mentions that other sources documenting Jesus' life and teachings were already in circulation, possibly including the other Gospels. Luke wrote his Gospel in Greek, and he used literary devices that would be considered elaborate and beautiful by the readers of his day. It is also the most detailed of the Gospels. Luke potentially used Mark and the Q source to write his book, as well as his own knowledge attained from several eyewitness accounts that might include Jesus' own family and closest followers. Now, I want to talk briefly about how the Synoptics compare to John's Gospel. There are several similarities and differences. One similarity is all 4 Gospels tell the basic Jesus story, discussing who Jesus was and what he did while on earth. Another similarity is certain events cross all 4 Gospels, such as the feeding of the 5,000 and the Passion Week, along with how similar teachings appear, like the betrayal predictions. On the other hand, one difference is in the writing style of John's Gospel. John started his book at the beginning of time, while the Synoptics start with Jesus himself on earth. In addition, the story plot is different, where John starts with Jesus already in his public ministry, whereas the Synoptics start with either his birth story or right before he starts his public ministry. Finally, the Synoptics focus on who Jesus was as a man on earth, portraying Jesus by their respective titles to their intended audiences, while John focuses on who Jesus was as God on earth, as a deity among humanity. The last thing I want to discuss about the writing of the Synoptic Gospels is how they were written as fact and not fiction. For one, there were several eyewitness accounts spanning from direct followers of Jesus, like Matthew, to indirect but not far removed followers, like Mark and Luke. Also, the authors did not embellish any detail of what they saw or heard to create an intriguing story arc. They simply tell who Jesus was and what he did. Third, the authors recorded their narratives in a way that got the point across without leaving out necessary details. And their accounts have correlations to those of other ancient writings like that of Josephus, a 1st century historian. Additionally, the authors understood the cultural context of their audience as well. Even though we in modern times have much to learn for fully understanding the Synoptics, the hearers at the time at least comprehended what was written to them, yet they didn't need to know every single detail. Examples of this are the farming parables, addressed to a farming community. And ultimately, the Synoptic Gospels were God-breathed, like all of Scripture is according to 2 Timothy 3:16, that by trusting Him and His Word, one can see that the Synoptics were written to tell Jesus' story as God led the authors to do so. Thank you.